chosen by the shadows, why you were followed by the forgotten ones. There's a moment I want you to remember. It didn't look like enlightenment. It didn't come wrapped in angel wings or bathed in golden light. It came when everything fell apart. When you were alone, confused, angry, maybe even afraid of yourself. That moment where your tears tasted like ash and your prayers felt like they bounced off the ceiling. That's when they showed up, not in the form of saints or saviors, but as something darker, something ancient, something that didn't try to rescue you, but instead watched you burn. That was the moment the demonic ambassadors noticed you, not because you were weak, but because you were ready. Let's be clear, when we say demonic, we're not talking about evil in the cartoonish, Hollywood sense. We're talking about primordial intelligence, archetypal energy, entities that operate beyond the binary of good and evil, beyond morality, beyond human ego. These are the ambassadors of the shadow beings who don't coddle your spirit, but forge it. They don't whisper sweet affirmations. They whisper truths you're not ready to hear. And if they followed you, if they've chosen to orbit your energy field, it's not a curse. It's a cosmic invitation to remember who you are beneath the light, in the deepest depth of your being. Most people don't recognize the signs because they've been trained to fear the dark. We've been programmed to associate discomfort with danger and silence with abandonment. But those of us on this path, we know better. We know that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in chaos, that the most profound initiations arrive dressed as breakdowns. So I want you to stay open. Because if you're watching this, it's very likely that the demonic ambassadors have been walking with you for years, maybe even since birth, and now they're ready to be seen. They're ready to remind you of the contract your soul signed long before you came into this body. So what are the signs? How do you know you're not crazy, or cursed, or just going through a rough season? You'll know because these signs don't just show up once. They're patterns. They repeat. They intensify. They evolve. And when you begin to notice them, your entire reality starts to shift. You begin to feel less like a victim of life and more like a player in a cosmic game you were born to master. The first sign is energetic exposure. You've probably noticed that you see things others don't. You feel energy when you enter a room. You sense lies behind smiles. You see behind the curtain of performance. This isn't paranoia, it's perception. Demonic ambassadors tune your spiritual senses by shattering your illusions. They make you hypersensitive for a reason so that you can't go back to sleep. It's like they tear off your blindfold before you're ready. But once it's off, you can never unknow what you've seen. And that's the point. They want you awake, raw, aware, because only then can you begin to wield your true power. The second sign is emotional volatility without external cause. You can be fine one moment and then suddenly feel rage, grief, or ecstasy for no clear reason. This isn't dysfunction. This is energetic calibration. The ambassadors stir your inner waters because they want you to dive deeper. They provoke you to feel what you've buried. They surface ancestral trauma, karmic residue, and repressed desire not to punish you, but to purify you. Think of it like this: they're not breaking you down. They're breaking you open. And through that opening, your shadow vibration begins to pulse louder, stronger, more clearly than ever before. The third sign is what I call sacred sabotage. Every time you try to conform, to fit into a normal life, something goes wrong. The relationship you thought was the one ends in betrayal. The job you thought would bring security collapses. The friend group suddenly turns cold. And each time you try to rebuild a safe, small life, it burns down again. That's not random. That's not coincidence. That's the demonic ambassadors saying, "You weren't born for this." They don't want you safe. They want you sovereign. So they keep removing anything that would sedate you, anything that would delay your evolution. It's cruel love, but it's love. And now I ask you the first deep question, not rhetorical, real. What have you been trying to build that your soul keeps trying to burn? What version of yourself are you clinging to that's already a corpse? Because the longer you hold on to what no longer fits, the harsher the ambassadors become. They'll whisper at first, then they'll nudge, then they'll wreck your life until you listen. Why? Because they're not interested in your comfort. They're interested in your capacity. And they will not stop until you remember what you are. The fourth sign is mirrored intensity. You attract intense people, polarizing souls, people who are either obsessed with you or triggered by your very presence. This is because your shadow vibration is becoming active, and it forces people to confront their own. You are like a mirror that doesn't lie, and that mirror makes people uncomfortable. Have you noticed how people project their stuff onto you? How they either romanticize or demonize you? That's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because you're broadcasting a frequency that cuts through masks. You are no longer just human, you are becoming a catalyst. You're walking through the world like a live wire, and the ambassadors feed that frequency. They amplify it. They want you to become a force of disruption, because only disruption leads to true awakening. They don't care if you're liked. They care if you're effective. And if you've ever wondered why people either want to worship you or destroy you, now you know. It's not about you. It's about what you activate in them. And that activation is sacred. The fifth sign is dream encounters. You've had vivid dreams where you're visited by beings, symbols, or settings that feel more real than waking life. You wake up trembling or buzzing with energy. You've seen eyes in the dark, tunnels, serpents, temples. You've had dreams where you were being taught, tested, even torn apart. These aren't just dreams. These are initiations. The demonic ambassadors often work in the astral, where your ego can't interfere. They use dreams to shape you, to decode you, to prepare you. Pay attention to these dreams. Write them down. They are more real than you think. And I want to ask you one more thing. What if your nightmares were actually messages? What if everything you've been taught to fear in your dreams was a portal instead of a prison? What if the fear you feel isn't a warning but an invitation? Because here's the truth most people never hear. The gateway to your power is guarded by the very shadows you've been taught to run from. The sixth sign is obsession with the forbidden. You're drawn to subjects, ideas, and energies that others find taboo. Shadow work, death, lust, power, ancient magic. You've probably felt ashamed of this before. You tried to repress it. Maybe you even tried to be more light. But that pull never left. It keeps calling. That's because it's not a dysfunction. It's a signal. The ambassadors are trying to awaken the parts of you that were demonized by culture and religion. They're showing you that your desire is sacred, that your hunger is holy, that your instincts are intelligent. You're not broken, you're becoming. And the seventh sign, the most powerful of all, is sovereign remembrance. You start to remember who you were before you were programmed. Before the shame, before the conditioning, before the fear. You begin to feel your own power not as ego, but as essence. You stop trying to fit in. You stop explaining yourself. You stop apologizing for your intensity. You begin to feel free. Not because everything is easy, but because you finally know what's real. And in that moment, the demonic ambassadors don't just follow you. They walk with you, not as masters, not as saviors, but as allies, as mirrors, as family. Bloodline of the abyss, why you were marked for initiation before birth. There are truths so ancient, so deeply embedded in your spirit, that even when the world tried to make you forget, your bones remembered. You felt it. The strange pull toward darkness, not because you're drawn to destruction, but because you know something sacred lives there. You've always sensed there was something different about you, something otherworldly, something older than your name. And the deeper truth, one that very few are ready to accept, is this: you were marked before birth. Your soul entered this plane already carrying the signature of the shadow current. And because of that, the demonic ambassadors noticed you before you even spoke your first word. This is not about ego. This isn't about being special in the way our culture defines it. This is about responsibility. If they've followed you since childhood, it means you carry something powerful, something that could shift not just your life, but entire timelines. You might have had strange dreams as a child. You may have seen things that others said weren't real. You may have had moments of knowing things about people before they said a word, or feeling energy in rooms so strongly that you thought something was wrong with you. But nothing was wrong. Everything was awakening. The demonic ambassadors were already beginning their work. You were marked for initiation not because you were broken, but because you were designed differently. Your soul chose the fire. You chose the harder path, the deeper path, the darker path, not to suffer, but to lead. Not to dominate, but to disrupt. Not to preach religion, but to embody truth. And for that, your life had to unfold differently. You weren't allowed to stay asleep like others. Your traumas came early. Your betrayals hit harder. Your loneliness ran deeper. Because that's how the demonic ambassadors prepare a vessel. They don't build you, they strip you down so that what remains is pure soul, pure will, and an unshakable connection to the primal source. Let's talk about the bloodline. Many of you have inherited pain in your DNA, generational trauma, ancestral silence, karmic residue. But what if I told you that you also inherited power? That your lineage wasn't just cursed, it was coded. There are bloodlines that carry frequencies of alchemy, of shadow mastery, of spiritual rebellion. If you come from healers, witches, warriors, mystics, or outcasts, chances are your family line was watched by the ambassadors long before you arrived. And if your family rejected the dark, feared it, or was destroyed by it, it's because they sensed the depth of what was trying to move through them. You were born to complete what they could not. You are the one who said yes when others ran. You are the one who chose to remember. And because of that, the demonic ambassadors are not just following you, they are invested in you. They will test you, yes. They will shake your life, yes. But they will also protect you in invisible ways. How many times have you narrowly avoided disaster? How many times have you felt something watching you, guiding your steps, rerouting your path? That's not paranoia. That's presence. They are not here to save you, but they will preserve you until your mission is complete. And that mission begins when you claim it. Not when you're perfect. Not when you're healed. Not when the world finally understands you, but now, in the mess, in the fire, and in the rawness of your becoming. And here's the irony. The people who are the most powerful conduits for shadow work are often the ones who feel the most unworthy. Why? Because the world has taught us to associate darkness with shame. But the shadow isn't shameful. It's sovereign. It's where your real voice lives. It's where your wild instinct breathes. And when you stop trying to be light enough to be loved, you become powerful enough to lead. So I want to ask you something deeply uncomfortable, but honest. Who would you be if you stopped trying to be good? What would you say, do, create, or destroy if you no longer needed to prove your worth through purity? If you no longer ran from your rage, your lust, your ambition, your silence? What would happen if you remembered that the dark is not the enemy, but the origin? Because the moment you stop resisting it, the moment you merge with it, everything changes. You no longer just walk in the shadow, you become the shadow that moves with purpose. You were marked not because life is cruel, but because your soul is capable, because you can hold more than most, because you were built to withstand the fire that others fear. And now, the demonic ambassadors are not just following you, they're activating you. They're drawing closer not to haunt, but to hand you the mirror. And in that mirror is your reflection, not as a victim, not as a seeker, but as a channel of the primal current. A being who remembers that transformation doesn't come through light alone, but through the holy fusion of fire and shadow. The sacred distortion effect, how you trigger evolution simply by existing. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift, even before you said a word? Have you noticed how people start confessing things to you they've never told anyone, or how others project their deepest insecurities onto you, as if you're their personal mirror? Maybe you've been blamed for chaos you didn't cause, or praised for healing you didn't even know you offered. That's not coincidence. That's the sacred distortion effect. And it happens when someone like you, someone marked by the demonic ambassadors, starts living in alignment with their shadow vibration. You become a living frequency disruptor. You don't just exist, you evolve every space you enter, whether you mean to or not. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual awakening. People think it ends with inner peace and good vibes. But for those of us who carry the shadow current, awakening doesn't make us gentle, it makes us clear. And clarity is confrontational. Just by being who you are, unapologetically, you create spiritual friction in others. You awaken what they've buried. You stir the sludge they've kept under the surface. You activate their suppressed power and their hidden pain. And because most people don't know how to hold that kind of charge, they either cling to you or try to crucify you. They don't even know why. They just feel something shift and blame you for the earthquake inside them. This is your sacred distortion. It's not a flaw. It's a gift, but only if you learn to wield it with awareness. You must understand the weight of your presence. You're not just a person anymore, you're a portal. You carry the potential to collapse false identities, expose illusions, and trigger dormant power just by existing. But here's the catch: this power doesn't come with instructions. It's raw. It's wild. It's easy to misuse. That's why the demonic ambassadors don't just hand it to anyone. They walk with you, test you, strip you down, and only when you've shed enough illusion do they activate this level of distortion energy in you. And when it begins, you'll know. People will start shifting around you. You'll notice strange synchronicities. Someone will say something you were just thinking. You'll speak, and it will feel like you're channeling words from somewhere ancient. You'll breathe, and others will feel seen. Not because you're trying, but because your frequency is finally awake. And this is where your responsibility deepens. Because the sacred distortion effect isn't about control, it's about permission. You're not here to force people to evolve. You're here to embody evolution so unapologetically that others either rise to meet you or fall away. Let me ask you something. What version of you are you still shrinking so others feel safe? What truth are you still softening so others don't get triggered? Because every time you dilute your energy to keep the peace, you betray the very current that's trying to move through you. You block the distortion. You delay the awakening. You say no to the very force that chose you. And the demonic ambassadors will notice. They'll begin to shake things up again. Not because they're punishing you, but because they refuse to let you become a sleeping giant. You must learn to stand in your frequency without flinching. You must accept that some people will misunderstand you forever. That some will resent you for the very medicine you carry. That some will project their wounds, fears, and fantasies onto your face. And still you stand. You speak. You breathe. You exist. Not for validation. Not even for impact. But because your very existence is a sacred signal to the universe, I remember who I am. And that memory distorts the matrix. That memory bends reality. That memory is contagious. This is why the demonic ambassadors follow you. Not to hurt you, not to possess you, but to prepare you for this level of influence. Because once you reach this frequency, you can no longer hide. You become a spiritual disruptor, a walking initiation, a mirror that reflects what people both crave and fear. And if you can hold that without ego, without shame, without apology, you become unstoppable. Not because you dominate others, but because you liberate them by liberating yourself. The final flame, when your shadow becomes a weapon for light. By now you know this path was never about comfort. It was never about being liked, accepted, or even understood. It was about becoming true. And truth, real, unfiltered, bone-deep truth, is not always pretty. It's not always gentle. Sometimes truth is a blade. Sometimes it's fire. And when you've walked with the demonic ambassadors long enough, when you've endured the initiations, the hauntings, the unravelings, you begin to realize something profound. Your shadow was never the enemy. It was the forge. The place where your light was tempered, refined, sharpened into something that could cut through illusion, not with violence but with precision. This is the final flame. The moment your shadow no longer consumes you, but becomes a weapon for light. Not the light of false positivity or spiritual bypassing, but the light of clarity. The light that exposes lies. The light that refuses to be silenced. You see, the world doesn't need more people avoiding their darkness. It needs people who can wield it consciously, who can sit in the fire and not flinch, who can walk into chaos and not collapse, who can speak uncomfortable truths, hold powerful frequencies, and not get drunk on their own reflection. That's what the demonic ambassadors have been preparing you for all along. Because when your shadow and your light finally stop fighting each other, something incredible happens. You become whole. And a whole human can no longer be controlled. You're no longer a puppet of shame, guilt, or fear. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer chase healing like it's a finish line. You are the healing. You are the flame. And that flame doesn't burn everything down, it burns away everything that was never you. All the masks, all the programming, all the roles you were forced to play, gone. What remains is sovereignty. What remains is truth incarnate. But here's the part no one tells you. This level of power is silent. It's not about shouting your worth or convincing others of your path. It's about frequency. It's about walking into a room and shifting the energy just by being present. It's about seeing through manipulation without needing to call it out. It's about using your shadow as a lens, not a weapon. You don't need to destroy others to protect yourself anymore. You've become undeniable. And when your presence alone is medicine, you no longer need to prove your magic. You simply are the magic. The demonic ambassadors knew this day would come. That's why they stayed close. That's why they broke you open again and again until you could finally hold the flame without being consumed. Not everyone makes it to this part of the journey. Many turn back. Many numb themselves with false light or get lost in the labyrinth of ego. But if you're still here, still listening, still becoming, it means something ancient in you refused to die. It means the flame inside you is not just for you. It's for the world. And now, the world needs you more than ever. We are living in a time where truth is currency, where authenticity is rebellion, where those who carry the shadow vibration are not just rare, they are essential. Because you don't just see the darkness in others, you know how to walk through it. You've lived it, you've bled in it, you've risen from it. And that makes you dangerous to every system built on lies, to every structure built on fear. But it also makes you sacred, because you're not here to destroy the world. You're here to rebuild it from the ashes of illusion. So now, I'll leave you with one final question. What will you do with the flame? Will you hide it to keep others comfortable? Will you dim it to avoid being feared? Or will you wield it with integrity, with clarity, with purpose? Because your shadow is no longer a burden. It's your birthright. The ambassadors didn't choose you to suffer. They chose you to lead, to liberate, to remember. And now that you've become the flame, it's time to burn.